Welcome. I'm Greg Lamp, Ciena's VP of Investor Relations. We appreciate you taking the time to listen to this webinar. During this discussion, you'll learn about Ciena's growth strategy that leverages our strong optical leadership. As many of you know, bandwidth growth of about 30% a year has been part of this industry for a long time, and it's been a big driver for our business as well. As we look ahead to our TAM expansion initiatives, including broadband access, coherent routing, and various AI-related opportunities, including the data center, we're excited about our future. We hope, after you hear this webinar, that you'll have an even greater appreciation for Ciena's current multifaceted leadership, our deep customer relationships, and our prospects as we look ahead. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Rothenstein, Chief Strategy Officer of Ciena. In connection with our other presentations on our optical systems and interconnects businesses and the technologies that underlie them, we wanted to provide you with some context. Context of current and evolving industry dynamics and market trends, including AI. Context of why optical will become even more important given those dynamics. And context of our strategy to leverage our optical technology and take full advantage of the market opportunities ahead of us. Let's start with the overall industry landscape. The left side of this chart represents our different customer segments and illustrates how different network operators are strategically focused on different networking agendas within the macro architecture. Service providers who connect users to cloud are focused on network transformation, recognizing that they need to modernize their connectivity business to compete in the new digital age. Cloud providers who connect cloud to cloud are focused on networking at large scale, recognizing that they need to build new infrastructure and services at lower cost to sustain historically high growth. And enterprises are focused on delivering a consistent, secure user experience from anywhere, optimizing connectivity to achieve the best of private and public clouds. And together, this is the essence of digital transformation, the integration of network connectivity, cloud applications, and enterprise security. And although the importance of connecting to and between clouds hasn't changed, industry dynamics have evolved significantly over the past year. With respect to service providers, there are a number of macro and industry factors that are impacting service providers, their revenues, competition, and cost of capital, and are resulting in sort of a transformation inertia so that they're not fully investing in their network transformation efforts. Investment in broadband wireline infrastructure is growing, and the most significant dynamic over the past 12 months is service provider inventory management, which has resulted in their slower deployment of excess products and negatively impacted their new spend. And for cloud providers, the most significant trend has been their increased focus and spend on enabling AI and provisioning their networks for AI-driven traffic. And this has resulted in an ultra-competitive market between the largest cloud providers. And you can see it in the fact that they have all substantially increased their CapEx budgets this year for that purpose. And for its part, AI is having a widespread impact that is fundamentally changing the networking landscape. The cloud services and applications that we use are incorporating AI, which is growing bandwidth usage and speeding up processes. AI is changing business models, where service providers want to build on AI ops to accelerate their transformation initiatives. And enterprises are looking to develop their business solutions faster to drive differentiation, creating a hyper-competitive environment for innovation and change. And finally, as cloud providers restructure their data centers to accommodate ultra-high-performance GPU clusters at massive scale, they're focused on minimizing infrastructure cost and power consumption, and that's resulting in fundamental changes to product consumption models. As we've said repeatedly, the most consistent demand driver for our business over the past decades has been optical bandwidth growth in the network, and that absolutely remains the case today. In fact, we believe that the underlying data generation that fuels bandwidth growth in both the network and the data center is being accelerated by cloud adoption and AI. By way of example, the growth of global data generation is accelerating, with a 2% year-over-year increase in the CAGR from 2022 to 2028. Cloud data, or data sourced in and out of the cloud and connected to and from data centers, is growing twice as fast as non-cloud data. And according to Signal, Bandwidth, both network and data center bandwidth, is projected to grow at even higher rates over the next few years. Clearly, these data points represent a very positive tailwind for the industry and for our business. Taking it a step further, let's combine Signal's view of bandwidth growth with Omdia's projections for AI-driven applications. And to understand it, it's helpful to think about AI as impacting network architecture in two types of network. First, the production of AI, which is highlighted by enormous bandwidth demand in and between data centers in support of training and tuning large language models. And this is currently being seen in large cloud provider networks where AI models are being trained. Second, the consumption of AI. This is the bandwidth associated with consumers of AI services who need to connect to AI inference locations. And the traffic here will be seen across service provider networks. The data shown in this chart on the left refers to the increase in user traffic for AI consumption, the second type. And as users adopt such applications over the next several years, Omdia projects that around 2/3 of user applications will involve AI by 2030. And turning to the right, with AI's ability to apply to both image text as well as images and video, we recognize AI as a long-term traffic amplifier, converting data streams from kilobytes to megabytes and ultimately to gigabytes of data, just like in the WAN. So if these various projections from industry analysts are to be believed, one could reasonably infer that these dynamics are likely to increase bandwidth growth in the WAN above its historical levels over time. A secondary effect of cloud and AI adoption is a more distributed data center infrastructure that encourages more optical data center interconnectivity. Here we show three trends that are and will be contributing to that dynamic. High energy demand. As data center processing grows in response to higher levels of computing, global data center power consumption is anticipated to double between 2022 and 2026. This insatiable need for power is encouraging a trend toward wider geographic distribution of data centers to access much-needed energy sources. And this physical separation of data centers will further create a need for new optical DCI links to attach the new data centers to the existing infrastructure. Data localization, or data sovereignty. As cloud and AI adoption grows in popularity, data localization is becoming a growing issue as government regulations introduce laws that limit some or all of their local data flows from crossing their national borders. To support local cloud processing, this is encouraging new data center builds in country that requires new optical DCI connections to attach to the broader infrastructure. And the localized nature of keeping data within national control aligns within the business reach of many regional or national service providers, many of whom are looking at data localization as a means to leverage their local geographic footprint and monetize their infrastructure as a local host. And finally, edge monetization. AI monetization ultimately relies upon the ability to infer an answer from a model. And according to Omdia, approximately 80% of GPUs sold today are used for this inference purpose. However, the vast majority are located in centralized data centers far away from end users. And given demand for a low latency response from the models, a new AI edge is being proposed, which would distribute the inference GPUs closer to end users, putting them in local metro data centers or edge compute sites. This distribution of potentially millions of GPUs is anticipated to drive a new interconnection architecture and growth in the WAN at the network edge. Another consequence of growing AI service traffic demand is the need for more diverse connectivity between more cloud provider locations across a wide range of geographies. And where possible, cloud providers may choose to build their own networks. However, as connectivity demand increases or due to regulatory constraints, the cloud providers are also choosing to outsource the WAN connectivity function to service providers who already have their fiber connectivity in place and who understand the business of WAN operations. So, service providers are now providing and managing managed optical fiber networks or MOFN on cloud providers' behalf, or even going further and selling them long-term rights to dark or unlit fiber. As an example, Lumen's strategy of focusing on data center interconnect through MOFN and dark fiber shows how cloud providers' connectivity requirements are starting to materially impact service provider behaviors. Specifically, a new type of service is evolving where service providers and cloud providers operate in partnership. And you can see an example here is Lumen's agreement with Corning for long-term supply of next-gen fiber optic cable, and their agreement with Microsoft to provide backbone connectivity highlights the introduction of this new type of partner ecosystem. So that's what we're seeing from an industry dynamics and market trends perspective. What does all this mean for Ciena? The good news is that our strategic pillars haven't changed. We continue to be focused on expanding our optical leadership, growing our market in next generation metro and edge or routing and switching, and driving a software-led transformation for customers' networks. And we believe that this consistency of vision and execution is a very good thing. And it's one of the reasons why we've been so successful in the past and why we will be successful going forward. But in looking at the opportunities ahead of us, our strategic approach necessarily differs and is evolving in order to align with those industry dynamics and intercept the market opportunities. This is a chart that captures on one slide the core of our strategy and how we think about our business at a high level, from where we've come to where we are to where we're going. And if you start at the bottom of the chart, you can see that optical and optical technology really is the foundation of our business and our strategic priorities. Moving up to the technologies and technology segments in the white chiclets, and the market or network segments in the red chiclets. So starting on the left side of the chart, you can see that we began as a company by providing products that enable operators to build network infrastructure over optical fiber, initially in long-haul and submarine markets, where we enabled high bandwidth connectivity across countries and between continents. And then we expanded that out for cost-efficient bandwidth across metro regional applications and for interconnecting data centers. This is our core business, and it's built upon our industry-leading vertically integrated optical technologies, where we combine our photonic line systems, our DSP design and the coherent optical modems, and our embedded off-box software. The investment requirements here are still very significant, and we remain focused on leveraging our undisputed technology leadership and our outstanding customer base to increase our global market share and to address high growth opportunities, particularly around the world. This is why and how we specialize in optical to become the best at moving bits over fiber. Then, moving to the right side of the chart, we can see how optical is the driving force and reason behind our strategic decisions to move into certain adjacent market segments and market expansion opportunities. Specifically, as bandwidth demands continue to accelerate, there is increasing market pressure for high-performance optical communications, which aligns with the core foundation of our business. High-capacity optical fiber connectivity is now more important than ever with the acceleration of cloud adoption and AI, which actually gives us a competitive advantage in leading with our optical technologies for metro routing and broadband access applications. But these are expansions and they do require a different strategy than optical. As the challenger and to differentiate our entry into these markets, we're seeking to leverage our optical technology advantage. So we're effectively pursuing a strategy of convergence, where our solutions integrate IP networking software with optical coherent transmission and integrating broadband networking software with PON transmission. It helps that the spend in the market is with the same customers as optical. In metro routing, the solution uses the same coherent optics, integrates into the same photonic line system, and is managed by the same SDN controller. And with broadband access, the network edge is rising in strategic importance for service providers so they can continue to own the connectivity of users to the cloud. And it helps that PON, or passive optical networking, has become the fiber-based access technology of choice at the edge. It's also important to recognize that market adoption of our solutions will be driven by the success of our software. Navigator, our multi-layer SDN controller, is critical to operationalizing converged IP optical platforms. And our IP NOS provides a robust networking feature set for routing platforms. And finally, on the far right of the chart, this is in connection with opportunities inside and around the data center, where the performance of our foundational optical technologies in its various forms aligns very well with cloud providers' desire for disaggregated consumption models. This trend toward disaggregation is leading us to incubate a new interconnects business to serve disaggregated solutions such as independent line systems, pluggable modules, or even the technology components themselves. And this is creating a broader growing market for our optical and PON technologies, allowing them to be consumed in different forms. This is another way to look at the evolution of our portfolio over time. I would note this is not a network topology, but rather an abstract view of the portfolio. And you can see that we're effectively leveraging 4 core technologies. WaveLogic, which of course underpins our coherent optical assets, initially building out of the service providers to build a global leadership position in optical systems. And then as cloud providers grew their network infrastructure, evolving into data center interconnect. And now, as we've discussed, with disaggregated models for optical connectivity, creating new markets for coherent plugs and components inside and around the data center. The IP NOS, where our routing and switching portfolio evolved originally from a layer 2 access and aggregation solution into 5G use cases like cell site routing and crosshaul. More recently into new markets, broadband access and metro routing, and now we're looking to combine our strong relationships with service providers with both WaveLogic and the IP NOS technologies to disrupt metro IP networks with converged coherent routing solutions. Navigator, again, the off-box software, the single pane of glass for network operators to manage all of our solutions. It's a critical enabler for the realization of our adaptive network vision and in support for service providers transforming the network infrastructure operations. And finally, Blue Planet, the automation software portfolio, is helping service providers realize a competitive digital services platform built around cloud-centric and cloud-native toolkits that automate service enablement. If we were to look at this chart 10 or 12 years ago, it would show long-haul, submarine, photonic line, and metro regional under WaveLogic, and access and aggregation under IP, and that's it. So you can really see how we've evolved our portfolio over a relatively short period. Putting it all together and looking out into the future, this hypothetical chart illustrates what we've been talking about. Specifically, the gray part of the candle shows that with cloud adoption and AI driving bandwidth growth in the network, we can continue to leverage our core business and grow our revenue at approximately our historical average growth rate. And the red part of the candle shows that in addressing our market expansion opportunities, including interconnects in and around the data center, metro routing, and broadband access, it could enable us to outpace that historical revenue growth rate over time. This is what enables us to believe so strongly in Ciena's future. We believe that we are well positioned to continue leveraging our optical technology advantage into current and evolving market dynamics, and specifically where our customers are going with their network architectures, deployments, and spend. I hope you found this brief overview of market dynamics and our strategy helpful, and thank you very much for your time in listening.
Hi, my name is Brody Gage. I run the global product and supply chain team here at Ciena. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the Ciena Optical Systems portfolio, as well as our strategy going forward. Ciena has been in the optical systems market now for approximately 3 decades, and we address all applications from the optical edge through the metro, regional and long-haul space, as well as even submarine. We have number 1 optical market share, excluding China. We're the leading partner of choice for all global cloud providers. We're a leader across all the applications I just mentioned, and we have deployments in over 70 countries with 26 of the top 27 service providers globally. We look at the optical systems market in 3 key segments. Number 1, on the left-hand side of the chart, is the cloud providers. This is the Metas, Googles, Microsofts, Amazons, XAI, Oracles, etc. of the world. In the middle, the North American service provider market, AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, Lumen, Charter, etc. are the largest spenders in this space. And on the far right-hand side of the chart is the international service providers across Latin America, EMEA, and Asia Pacific. If you look at these graphs, you can see on the left-hand side that the cloud providers are the fastest growing segment. They spent about $750 million in 2017, and that grew over 15% CAGR to about $2 billion by 2023. We believe that the cloud providers are going to continue to drive the fastest growth in this segment, and it's important for us to track this because we now have over 55% market share in this segment. The North American service providers have been relatively flat from 2017 to 2023 from a spend perspective. We have just over 40% market share, and maintaining that market share is important for us to continue to lead across the entire segment. And finally, in the international space, we have about 13 to 14% market share, depending on the quarter, here in 2023 and first half of 2024. And that is an opportunity for us going forward to continue to grow share. When we look at these segments, what are the key trends that we see? If you look at the service providers on the right-hand side of this chart, I think our belief system is that more and more they're going to become fiber and wireless access companies, connecting content to users and be that last mile connectivity. That doesn't mean they're not going to have metro and long haul networks. They certainly will, but that it's going to feed their wireless and fiber-based access services that they're trying to offer. The other key thing that we're seeing in the service providers across the globe is the requirement for digitalization and automating operations. The number one challenge these service providers are facing is their OPEX costs, their OSSs and back office deployments, and they're looking for solutions to overcome that. In the Americas, we see inventory absorption challenges are starting to abate, and we're looking for new order growth here in the second half of 24 and moving into 2025. And from an international service provider space, we continue to see regulatory headwinds for the Chinese, primarily Huawei, and we're starting to see more and more subsea expansion. On the cloud provider space, we're starting to see a lot of growth related to AI. And if you look at AI, what are the cloud providers trying to do? They're trying to build out these GPU clusters. And when they build out these GPU clusters, they're running out of power in their data centers. And when they run out of power in their data centers, they're looking or hunting for new data center locations where they can get cheap access to power. And when they do that, they're going to require more and more connectivity to interconnect users into those data centers and to connect those data centers together. And we see large opportunities in metro DCI interconnect, as well as in long haul and submarine transport applications to connect those data centers together. We've traditionally had about 35 to 36% CAGR in bandwidth growth, and there is a potential that longer term, that growth driven by AI will grow substantially going forward. We see that with Lumen securing the Corning contract, where they secured 10% of their fiber assets, and we also see it direct from these cloud providers where they're looking to obtain 90 to 100 fiber pairs between all their data centers, when today they might have only 2 to 4 fiber pairs. They're certainly looking at significant bandwidth growth, not just within their data center, but across the WAN infrastructure as well. So what is our strategy going forward? In the cloud provider space, I mentioned earlier that we have over 55% market share. We want to make sure that we maintain and grow that market share moving forward, both with the largest cloud providers in the world, some of the ones I mentioned, as well as some of the emerging cloud providers that are entering the market. And we're going to leverage our photonic strength. We're going to leverage our coherent modem strength with WaveLogic 6E and 6N to continue to drive market share leadership here and to differentiate. And as we do that, I believe that the AI build-outs will drive more and more photonic deployments as well as coherent modems on top of those photonics. And I really believe that the optical infrastructure will be at the heart of their AI ambitions going forward. From a service provider perspective, maintaining our market position, our market share position in North America is critical. We have a strong position in the large tier 1 accounts as well as the tier 2 accounts in the region. We're going to take advantage of cloud and AI-driven capacity upgrades within those service providers. We're going to take advantage of MOFN build-outs, the build-outs of the network traffic on behalf of the cloud providers. And we're going to try to take advantage of digital transformation and their AI ops initiatives with our Navigator and Blue Planet software assets. Along with our traditional optical systems, we're going to leverage our optical strength, both in the photonics, our coherent modems, as well as our Navigator software, to pull through IP routing platforms and try to take advantage of those customers that are looking to converge their IP and optical infrastructure. From an international perspective, we really have three key pillars. One is to continue to go after Huawei replacement opportunities. There have been RFPs. We've won our fair share of RFPs. The spend hasn't really started to happen in a big way yet, but we're going to continue to go after those opportunities, and we expect spend to start to grow as we move forward through 2025 and into 2026. The second key pillar from an international perspective is to continue to drive submarine leadership with our photonics and, again, our WaveLogic 6E. We have clear differentiation against all of our competitors in this space. I think we'll see opportunities to grow and build new cables as well as upgrade old cables such that we can drive better spectral efficiency and performance and better utilization of the fiber assets that are under the water for our key customers. And the third key thing that we're going to do is, as the cloud providers grow into new international markets, whether that's India, Middle East, Africa, Europe, wherever it may be, they cannot build out their own infrastructure in every country, and will follow those cloud providers in to new countries and new opportunities, and leverage our direct relationships with those cloud providers to win these new MOFN wins going forward. The next section is just going to take you through our portfolio strategy and how we differentiate and how we win in the optical systems market. And really comes down to three key things. Number one, we have the best programmable infrastructure in the market with our photonic line systems and WaveLogic coherent optics. Number two, we have the best software control and automation software suite with Navigator. And number three, our professional services and being able to offer those services globally. We're going to dive deeper into a few of these key areas. The first thing is just the photonic layer. And I know that some of our competitors, Cisco, etc., talk about this routed optical network architecture, which completely eliminates photonics from the network. We at Ciena do not believe that that's going to happen, and in fact believe that the photonic layer will become more and more important both to the cloud providers and our service providers, customers globally. Why is that the case? Number one, it provides the lowest cost, lowest power, and lowest latency solution to move bits around in the network. It supports higher speed services and fast adoption of new coherent technologies. What does that mean? It means customers can deploy 100 gig today, 400 gig tomorrow, 800 gig or 1.6T. It's rate independent, these photonic solutions. So it allows our customers to grow the traffic as they need it and allows them to program capacity across this photonic infrastructure. More as AI hits the cloud provider and these MOFN networks going forward, this photonic layer will become more and more important. I'll give you an example. A Tomahawk 5, latest Tomahawk switch from Broadcom is over 500 watts of power. It can switch 51 terabits per second. One of these ROADM nodes can switch petabits per second and can do it in 25 watts. So it's an order of magnitude lower cost, lower power, and lower latency than any type of digital solution in the market. We're going to continue to invest here. And again, the photonic layer will be the backbone of AI-driven traffic as we move forward. The second key piece of that programmable infrastructure and why we win is our WaveLogic coherent optics. And this is what, if the photonics are your highway, the WaveLogic coherent optics is what puts the traffic across that highway. And if you look at what Ciena has accomplished over the last 20 years, we've gone from 10 gig per channel now to 1.6 terabits per channel with WaveLogic 6 Extreme. That's 160x throughput over the last 20 years. We've delivered 25 to 30% annualized cost and power per bit. And we've saved over 5.5 million metric tons of CO2 over the last 10 years. If you look in the bottom left, we've taken 2 racks of equipment that would have been required 14 or 15 years ago and put that into 2 rack units with our latest technology. So we drive the lowest cost, lowest power, and lowest space per bit, and we do it better than anyone else in the industry. Not only do we have the high performance optics that I just talked about, the 1.6T and WaveLogic 6 Extreme, we also have footprint and power optimized pluggable optics. You've heard about 400 gig ZR, ZR Plus. We have that with WaveLogic 5 Nano, already GA today. And we're coming out with 800 gig ZR and ZR Plus optics, and the only 3 nanometer CMOS technology in the market. Now, we know that there's concern around pluggables taking over this space and integration of pluggables and router taking over this space. We absolutely don't believe that to be the case. Number one, there's not one pluggable that suits ZR point-to-point DCI applications and campus applications and then serve metro, regional, long-haul type capabilities. There are different services that are required. There's different performance specs that are required. There's different types of plugs with amplifier or tunable optical filters integrated, etc., etc. Our competition talks about it as one plug and say it's going to take over the world. We absolutely do not believe that. There are different types of plugs required for different types of applications. I mentioned that we recently launched WaveLogic 6 Extreme. It's just about to go generally available here in October, and we've already completed quite a few trials. The public ones are Aurelian, where we went 1.6 terabits over 470 kilometers from Ashburn to Virginia Beach. We launched or announced Telstra, who did 1.6 terabits at 730 kilometers in Australia. And we've had multiple other trials across submarine and key European routes, as well as in North America as well. The performance is there, and we're very proud of our leading WaveLogic 6 Extreme technology, the only one that can support 1.6T at 200 gigabaud a second. I said earlier that Ciena does not believe plugs are going to take over the world. And in fact, I believe that plugs are an absolute opportunity for Ciena going forward. And let me tell you why. There's 3 graphs here. Metro, typical 500 kilometer link. Regional, 1,300 kilometer link. And typical long haul links, 2,700 type kilometer type links. And there's 2 graphs on each one of those applications, a pluggable graph and a performance graph, and each one highlighting how much capacity can you get on the fiber and what's the cost associated with delivering that solution. If you look in the metro, certainly for metro DCI or point-to-point type applications, the cost of pluggable solutions is about 30% better than high-performance optics. Unfortunately, though, the capacity that you can deliver on a fiber is 40% less. And the regional space, 1,300 kilometers in the middle portion of the graph, the cost is basically even between a pluggable solution and a high-performance solution. But again, you take an impact on capacity. It's about a 30% capacity impact in that regional space with moving to pluggables. And in the long-haul space, the high-performance modems, where you don't require regens or OEO conversions, is 40% less expensive than pluggables, and capacity is 2x greater. So why are we not worried about the pluggables? Well, number one, in the cloud providers, about 90% of our business is in the regional, long-haul, and submarine space, where the high-performance modems will continue to be deployed. In fact, all the top cloud providers are going to be standardizing on our WaveLogic 6E technology for those types of applications. And if you look at the service providers have really not been able to disaggregate their platforms from their pluggables. The cloud providers have been able to do it in some ways, but the service providers have not. The service providers look for vertically integrated solutions. So service platforms together with photonics, together with an off-box software solution that puts it all together for them, because they're looking for one provider that they can go to when there's problems in their network. So the service providers really haven't been able to disaggregate it. And again, if you look at Ciena's business, even in the service provider space, it's much less than what we do in the regional and long-haul space. Okay, so all these links are not equal. There are trade-offs between cost, capacity, what services you're trying to offer, disaggregated versus converged deployments, etc., etc. And we think the right solution offering is to be able to support both the pluggable optics and the high performance optics. There might be one link in a portion of the customer network that needs the high performance optics, and other links where it makes sense to have pluggable optics. Being able to provide both solutions is the winning hand in this space. And from a Metro DCI perspective into the cloud providers, that's a big opportunity for Ciena going forward, where we currently don't have any significant business. We're going to leverage our coherent modem leadership across the extreme and pluggable or nano branches, not just within our optical system portfolio, platforms like 6500, Waveserver, our OTN NID portfolio, but also into purpose-built coherent routers. And there'll be a segment of the market that will want to drive towards IP optical convergence. The second largest service provider in North America, Verizon, has an announcement around us and their IEN infrastructure. They are looking for a converged infrastructure. There are other customers that will want to contain or separate their transport nodes separate from their IP nodes. The largest service provider in North America is one of those customers. We are going to support both deployment models. So we're integrating our coherent modems not just into our transport nodes, but also into our purpose-built coherent routers to try to leverage our optical strength to pull through IP routers and to be able to differentiate against those routing companies like Arista, like Juniper, etc., that don't have the same set of coherent optics in their portfolio. The last piece of the portfolio offer, or the winning hand I'm going to talk about, is our multi-layer network control and automation. And that's really around our Navigator network control suite, which consists of our multi-layer controller, our intelligent applications, our emulation cloud, and the planning tools that go into it. I mentioned earlier that one of the biggest challenges within our service provider customers is their back office and the OpEx costs associated with their back office. And they need to automate what they've traditionally been doing with manual and slow operations. We've taken a unique approach, and we started it back about 7 years ago with this Navigator network control suite, where we decided to build a futuristic, brand new architecture around our off-box software. That solution would be in place to support not just what we're trying to do in our coherent modems and our photonics, but also what we're doing with IP routing and our broadband access portfolio. And with that modernized architecture, we can differentiate against those competitors who have a siloed approach, like Nokia, who have an offer for optical, a separate offer for broadband access, and a separate offer for their IP portfolio. We've decided to build a next-gen controller that can support all those different types of applications, such that once we're in on the optical side of the house in a customer and have that incumbency, we can leverage this off-box software and the automation we've been able to drive into our customers to pull through the rest of the portfolio. Okay, and because we've gone with this modernized architecture, not only can we support Ciena network elements, we can support third-party network elements as well. And because of the modernized infrastructure that we have in place, we're able to integrate technologies and products much faster than the competition. So we invest significantly in this Navigator network control suite. We believe that the user experience, especially in the service provider space, will become more and more important. And we have a best-in-class portfolio here that we're going to continue to invest in to differentiate our product portfolio. So just going back to the first chart I presented and reiterating, the Ciena optical system portfolio goes from edge through metro, long haul, and submarine applications. I believe we have a significantly differentiated portfolio, and the gap between us and the competition continues to grow. We have best-in-class photonics, best-in-class coherent modems with WaveLogic 5 and now WaveLogic 6, and we have the best controller application and software suite with Navigator to be able to control and automate that infrastructure for our customers going forward. So what are the key takeaways? Number one, Ciena is the global leader in optical systems. We have number one market share in the fastest growing market, which is the cloud providers, and AI will accelerate this. Photonics and coherent modems will be at the heart of AI interconnect. We're positioned to win. We have great customer relationships, and we have the right portfolio with our photonics, coherent optics, and navigator multi-layer control. And we're going to leverage this optical system strength and that optical differentiation to go into new TAM expansion opportunities, including broadband access, metro routing, and inside and around the data center with our interconnects portfolio.
I'm going to begin with an outline of what we mean when we say in and around the data center. This chart shows a relatively simplified view of a data center interconnect architecture. Starting at the far right, we have the PCB, or printed circuit board, which represents the board level interconnect within an actual server. This interconnect can be for connecting CPUs, GPUs, and storage elements, and are wholly contained within the server. Servers are mounted and interconnected within a rack, and their reaches are in the order of meters. Racks are then networked within a data center building, and there the interconnect reaches can range from a few meters to as many as a few kilometers, depending upon the size of the data center building. In the case of large data center complexes, individual data center buildings are interconnected within a campus construct. Campuses can have interconnect distances that range from a few kilometers to even a few tens of kilometers, depending upon the area. Campuses are then interconnected across the metropolitan area, and this is the metro DCI segment so often referred to in our industry. Their reaches can be as great as 100 kilometers, depending upon the size of the interconnect region. For completeness, at the far left, we have the interregion, which is the traditional optical systems business for us. Here, the interconnect is between metropolitan areas, hundreds of kilometers, to as great as many thousands of kilometers in the case of transoceanic links. Historically, data center interconnect has been very well served by what we refer to as gray optics, or non-coherent IMDD. Coherent DWDM technology is the main interconnect of choice for the wide area network. This includes the interregion, of course, and also the majority of the metro DCI, especially as the interconnect rates hit 400 gig and above. However, the technology play here is rapidly evolving. It's primarily driven by the dramatic interconnect capacity increases driven by AI and machine learning, but it's also being driven by increasing distances of the interconnect, campuses and metropolitan areas, as these data center operators need to spread out in search of more power, space, and cooling. Now, David's already done a great job of covering the AI machine learning trends and the associated implications on today's networks. I just want to emphasize a couple of new and key themes, requirements that are emerging from this. First is capacity. The high-performance GPUs are driving interconnect requirements to unprecedented levels. While most of this is contained within a data center today, it's pretty clear that this level of growth will certainly spread beyond the data center, at least into the campuses. Secondly, in an effort to manage this unprecedented scale, especially with an eye to power consumption and latency, several large-scale cloud providers are also considering and even adopting architectures that incorporate photonic switching elements. These architectures can provide very low power consumption and latency as compared with traditional Ethernet switch interconnects, but they do impose some optical propagation challenges for the interconnect endpoints. Lastly is reach. This insatiable appetite for space and power is forcing data centers and campuses to spread out over larger geographic areas. The bottom line here is optical interconnect performance always matters, because the performance can deliver capacity and or reach and or overcome optical propagation impairments. I'll say a bit more about the optical interconnect approaches and underlying technology. On the left, you see the non-coherent IMDD, or intensity modulation direct detect. It's a relatively simple scheme. It encodes the bits of information within the intensity of the light. The simplest scheme is light on, light off. That's 1 bit per symbol. More recently, at higher speeds of interconnect, the industry's moved to a PAM4 approach, which is really the same, but just with 4 levels of light intensity. That encodes 2 bits per symbol. On the right is the coherent optics approach. This interconnect scheme employs a much more sophisticated method, whereby bits of information are encoded in the amplitude, the phase, and even the polarization of the light. This results in significantly more capacity for a given symbol rate and/or a given amount of spectrum. Beyond the efficiency, however, coherent processing also results in more performance and reach. And that's because the associated signal processing is also used to mitigate much of the propagation impairments that IMDD is especially vulnerable to at higher speeds. I should note that historically, IMDD has typically been just a single channel per fiber pair. That's why we call it gray optics, quote unquote, while coherent easily lends itself to having many channels, in fact, many tens of channels on a given fiber pair. Now, historically, IMDD capacity and performance has been good enough, and as a result, has been the de facto interconnect technology in the data center because its simple approach lends itself well to lower cost and power. However, as the capacity increases and the distances of the interconnect are stretched, the IMDD approach is really hitting the walls in terms of the physics of high-speed signal propagation. As a consequence, the evolution to coherent approach is becoming more and more inevitable. In fact, the latest high-capacity IMDD plugs already have to incorporate a certain level of digital signal processing just to function. The signal processing adds power and cost to the scheme, which was one of its original advantages. And being IMDD, even with that signal processing, the interconnect remains brittle and still reach limited, especially compared to coherent approaches. By the way, we've seen this movie before in the wide area network about 20 years ago. Up to 10 gigabit per wavelength, IMDD was the de facto even in the long haul systems. Some tried to stretch that to 40 gig, but it was clear, and as of 100 gig and beyond over the last 2 decades, it's 100% coherent. As was the case in the wide area network, the technology crossover point is dependent upon the interconnect capacity and the required reach. This relatively simple table maps out the technology playing field in and around the data center across both of those dimensions. For the Metro DCI segment, it's universally acknowledged that coherent technology is the one of choice, and this was true starting with the 400 gig interconnect. Within the campus, we believe that this is the next technology inflection point. Most agree that it'll be inevitable at 3.2 terabits, but given the scale and those increasing distances, more and more believe that coherent will be needed at 1.6 T and possibly even at 800 gig. Lastly, within the fabric of the data center, as I noted earlier, the distances are not so large, but with the emergence of new architectures, including optical cross-connects, the impairments are large enough that coherent is now becoming a very real consideration in that space as well. Migration towards coherent technology, more specifically a coherent light implementation thereof, really supports some of these key emerging data center trends and applications. First, simply enabling increased campus reach is extremely valuable. This is at 1.6 terabits and certainly at 3.2 terabits in the future. Coherent light can easily handle spans of 20 kilometers or more, and this is well beyond the breaking point of even the DSP-assisted IMDD technologies. Second, leveraging coherent technology with DWDM, or dense wavelength division multiplexing, can achieve a 20 to 30 times capacity multiplier per fiber pair versus traditional IMDD. This is critical, especially as the campus distances increases, and also in cases where the fiber count is somewhat limited. Finally, enabling the use of more optical cross-connect technology and photonic switching in order to expand fabrics and clusters while keeping power consumption and latency as low as possible. So, why Ciena? In fact, it was just about 25 years ago at Telecom 99 in Geneva that our technical team demonstrated the world's first 80 gigabit per second optical interconnect technology. While it was an incredible achievement to say the least, it was also clear that that approach, which was largely based on IMDD, of course, had already realized its practical limit. From that realization, we launched the technology and investment programs that would apply digital signal processing and coherent communication techniques to the optical domain. Over the next 2 decades or so, Ciena has led the optical communication industry, beginning with the very first DSP-assisted optical modem back in 2005. About 5 years after that, the first fully coherent 100 gigabit per second optical modem, and subsequently the very first 400 gig, 800 gig, and most recently, we are ramping the industry's first 1.6 terabit per second optical modem, which is based on 3 nanometer CMOS FinFET technology. We clearly rode the silicon technology roadmap over these DSP generations, but beyond the CMOS, Ciena has also developed all of the associated high-speed analog and electro-optics technology and material systems that are critical to realizing the optical modems. Needless to say, the expertise and experience developed over these generations will be key to solving the new interconnect challenges in and around the data center. This chart provides a bit of a view under the hood of our latest Generation 6 optical modem technology. The heart of the 1.6 terabit WaveLogic 6E modem is, of course, the fully custom 3 nanometer DSP ASIC. This is all Ciena technology, including the massive digital core that implements the advanced signal processing mathematics. It also, though, includes very high-speed mixed signal digital analog and analog to digital converters. These converters are unmatched in the industry and provide the necessary speed and performance to achieve the full 1.6 terabit per second transmission. Beyond the DSP, there are the critical transmit and receive electro-optic components. These devices are designed to provide a full 100 gigahertz of baseband bandwidth in support of the maximum 200 gigabaud symbol rate. Once again, unmatched in the industry, fully designed and owned by Ciena. On the right, the smaller brother, this WaveLogic 6 Nano, is an equally impressive feat of technology and engineering. While the main data rate at 800 gigabits per second is half of the extreme, the challenge here is to still deliver the industry-leading performance at 800 gig while fitting into a plug that draws merely 30 watts. It incorporates a different, again, fully custom 3 nanometer CMOS DSP, and that also includes the integrated performance converters and SerDes interfaces. Also, a different set of transmit and receive electro-optics. These are specifically optimized to deliver the required performance within the space and power envelope. The 6E technology is in volume production now, and the Nano will be available at the beginning of 2025. Ciena offers a complete portfolio of coherent pluggable optics at both 400 and 800 gigabit per second. Beyond the industry standard interop ZR and ZR Plus modes, we also include custom higher performance modes that are a true differentiator for our customers. In all cases, we offer the best performance per power metric. At this point, we have well over 100 customers for our 400 gig plug portfolio, and that includes major wins across 4 of the largest cloud providers. With an eye to the future, we also have the only 800 ZR Plus awarded to date. Beyond, we've just announced that ECOC, an industry-first 1.6 terabit per second coherent light plug. This was designed for those specific data center fabric and campus applications that I addressed earlier. In terms of serving the market, there are clearly new opportunities for Ciena, as well as new consumption models in our future. Today, we offer a complete optical systems portfolio. This includes the highest performance and lowest power coherent transponder and pluggable modems, a fully featured and adaptive photonic line systems, a wide array of network elements that support OTN, Ethernet, and IP services, and last but not least, a fully integrated multi-layer management system that allows our customers to efficiently deploy and operate massive networks across the globe. We also offer standalone coherent modules. Both the performance ones are extreme at 400 gig, 800 gig, and now at 1.6 terabit, as well as a full portfolio of coherent pluggable optics. Looking to the future, there is also the potential opportunity for us to expand and offer our DSP technologies as standalone devices as well as our leading-edge high-speed analog and electro-optic components. These will be available to serve the broader model and markets as the consumption models evolve going forward. Netting it all out, we see the in and around the data center interconnect market as a very exciting and rapidly emerging opportunity for Ciena. And this is entirely incremental to our existing optical systems business. 2, coherent and DSP-enabled optical interconnect technology is becoming critical as the traditional gray or IMDD technology reaches its limits, just as it did some 20 years ago in the wide area network. And third, all of this plays directly to our strengths. Ciena has decades of proven innovation and industry leadership in high-capacity optical interconnect, as well as a fully vertically integrated technology model. And this encompasses not only the math, the physics, the digital signal processing, but also the critical high-speed analog and electro-optic components. This is why we believe Ciena is extremely well positioned to win. Thank you.